Assalamu alaikum everyone, this is Nazir and welcome to Knowledge Realm. Students, in the last lecture we studied the Government of India Act of 1935 and today we're going to cover Congress Ministries, or we can say Congress Raj, that started in 1937 and ended in 1939. So stay focused and let's get started. Starting with a brief introduction of Congress Raj. Students, Congress ruled India from 1937 to 1939. Government of India Act 1935 that came out as a result of the roundtable conferences that was a kind of constitution for India mandated these elections. Then elections were held in 11 provinces of India in 1936 and Congress won 711 seats out of total 1585 provincial seats. This made Congress successful in 8 provinces. It won absolute majority in Madras, UP, CP, Bihar and Orissa and made government in Bombay also. Muslim League, on the other hand, could not get any notable success in these elections and Muslim League lost these elections. Now we're going to start the detailed study of Congress Raj 1937 to 1939. We're going to start with the background and what was the situation of society at the time, and then we're going to study the Congress Raj 1937 to 1939, how Congress ruled India when it came to power in 1937, and then we're going to study the impacts of Congress Raj in India. So starting with the situation before the elections. Well, we have studied in the previous lecture that the Government of India Act 1935 mandated the elections in provinces. It was the result of 3 roundtable conferences that were held in London, and it is a kind of constitution for India. British government gave constitution for India, and in this constitution elections were mandated in provinces so that Indian people can make their government in the provinces of India. So both the two leading parties of India started their campaigns. All India Muslim League and Indian National Congress started their campaigns, and studies show that their manifestos were not very different. Both the parties promised quite similar things to the people of India. First of all, both the parties promised religious freedom in India. They promised that there would be religious freedom for the minorities of India and there would be quashment of the oppressive laws, and then they promised that they would oppose all the laws that were designed to target the minorities of India. These were quite similar things that both the parties promised to the locals of India. But students, Congress fought the elections with money and material resources. Congress was a very well developed and strong political party in India. It was founded in 1885 and it had a very long experience of doing politics in India. It was a strong party in India. Moreover, it had strong links with the Hindu capitalists of Bombay and Ahmedabad. So, these capitalists provided money and material resources to Congress. Congress used these resources to fight elections in India. Another thing was that Gandhi, who was a very influential figure in India, was at the back of Congress. So Congress used Gandhi's influence to win the elections. On the other hand, All India Muslim League was a new party in India. It was founded in 1906 and it did not have any money and material resources. It did not have any backing of some strong figure, or it did not have any strong links with the capitalist or with the business tycoon or magnate of India. This is the reason that Congress, All India Muslim League, did not have any money or material resources. So it could not use these resources in fighting the elections or starting campaigns or anything like that. It had not become a popular party of the masses at that time because it was comparatively it was a new party. So students, consequently, Congress succeeded in setting its government in 8 provinces of India. This is how both the parties fought elections in India, and this is how Congress set its government in 8 provinces of India. So Congress won the elections of 1936. But what policies Congress adopted, what image it adopted, and what it announced right after winning the elections, let's see now. Students, Nawab Vikarul Mulk had expressed his apprehensions in his presidential address at the inaugural session of the All India Muslim League in 1906 about Hindu mentality. He had forewarned the Muslims that if Hindus ever came to power in the subcontinent, they would most certainly wreak vengeance upon them in return for Aurangzeb's rule. And to the horror of the Muslims, the Nawab's prediction came true in 1937 when the Congress assumed power in 8 provinces of India. Right after winning the elections, Congress started vandalistic policies to annihilate Muslim culture, civilization, language, and religion to settle, presumably, old scores with them. Subhash Chandra Bose, who was the president of Congress at the time, declared very blatantly that from now on the Congress would adopt the slogan of Congress dictatorship and should abandon the idea of cooperation or formation of a coalition government. This is what the president of Congress said right after winning the elections. Right after winning the elections, they showed their true colors and their true mentality towards Muslims. And this was the thing that Nawab Vikarul Mulk predicted in 1906 at the inaugural session of All India Muslim League. And as I've said earlier, that to the horrors of Muslim, Nawab Vikarul Mulk's prediction came true in 1937. Then Pandit Nehru said, there are only 2 parties in India, the Congress and the government. The others must line up. Right after winning the elections, Pandit Nehru neglected even the existence of All India Muslim League and existence of Muslims in India. Quaid-e-Azam refuted and said, I refuse to line up with the Congress. There is a third party in India, and that is Muslims. We are not going to be dictated by anybody. This is what Quaid-e-Azam said after listening to the statements of these 2 leaders of Congress. Quaid-e-Azam noticed that how these 2 leaders of Congress, right after winning the elections, trying to persecute, trying to oppress Muslims by giving their statements. What they're trying to reflect with these statements, they're trying to say that from now on we would not consider that there is another party in India. There is just 2 parties. First there is Congress and then the government. And now we would rule. There is a rule of Congress dictatorship. This is what Subhash Chandra Bose declared right after winning the elections. So Quaid-e-Azam refuted this. So now we're going to start with the policies adopted by Congress, and we're going to study how these policies were against Muslims and how these policies tried to incite anti-Muslim sentiments in the people of India, in Hindus of India actually. Well, first of all, right after coming to power, Congress declared a tricolor flag as national flag of India. Then Congress declared Bande Mataram national anthem of India. It was declared national anthem by Pandit Nehru. And the government of Congress also issued orders to sing this anthem before the beginning of any session in the assembly also. It was decided that before the starting of any session in assembly, people would sing this song and then they would start the session of assembly. But what is wrong with this anthem, with this song? Students, actually, Bande Mataram was a song of a novel that was written by a Bengali novelist, and the novel revolves around a Hindu militant who decides to revolt against Muslims, who decides to revolt against Muslim government, Muslim rule or Muslim empire in India. So this is the reason that the origin of this song was not very harmonious for the people of India. Muslim leaders thought, Muslim leaders believed that such kind of songs should not be the national anthem of a multi-ethnic state, because it would incite the anti-Muslim sentiments in people of India. Quaid-e-Azam objected at the decision of making this song national anthem. Muslim press, for example, Himayat-e-Islam and Abdi Dunya, also wrote against this anthem. Because the origin of this song was controversial. It was a song of a novel that was about a Hindu militant who decides to revolt against Muslims. And students, in this novel, the history was maligned, the history was distorted. And in this novel, I don't know, but just studies show that in this novel, I have not read this novel, but studies showed that in this novel, Muslims were presented as oppressor and Hindus were presented as oppressed, and the lead of the protagonist of this novel was a Hindu militant who gathered the courage and who decides to revolt against the persecution of Hindus by Muslims. So the main theme of this novel revolves around the rivalry between Hindus and Muslims. So the root of this song was not good for the people of India. Muslim leaders believe that this song as a national anthem would incite anti-Muslim sentiments in Hindus, and it would give rise to communal conflicts in India. This is the reason Quaid-e-Azam objected at the decision of making this song national anthem, and other Muslim leaders also objected. But Congress government turned a deaf ear towards the objections of Muslim leaders. This is how they showed indifference and ignorance toward the objections of Muslim leaders. Then another very controversial policy was the Vardha educational scheme. Students, make concentration here because this is very important. Well, this was new educational syllabus, and it was given by a committee appointed by Gandhi. Now, another very controversial thing, that in this committee, students, all people were Hindus and there were only 2 Muslims. This committee prepared a report that was called Vardha scheme, and this committee prepared a syllabus for the students of India. But students, the main aim of this committee and the syllabus was to infuse the ideology of one nation theory in minds of Muslim youth. Its aim was to remove the Islam from the minds of Muslims in India. It decided to inculcate Hinduism in Muslim youth of India. But how it tried to do this? First of all, it declared co-education and teaching of music compulsory in India, and we all know that Muslims and Islam do not like co-education. Furthermore, music is haram in Islam. But this educational scheme declared co-education and teaching of music compulsory in India. Muslim students were compelled to learn music in India. Then there were some books in which only Hindu culture was praised emphatically, and the portion of Muslim culture, history, and the achievements of Muslim pioneers was shortened, was reduced. Muslims were not taught about their history or their culture or their religion or Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in this educational scheme. The emphasis was just on Hindu culture, Hindu leaders, Hindu history, and that's all. There was no detailed essay or detailed study of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in the books of this educational scheme. Muslim students were not given any education of their own religion, their own culture, or their own history. This is how the Hindus were trying to erode away Islam and the education of Islam in India. This is how they were instilling the Hinduism in the Muslim youth. Another educational scheme was introduced. It was called Vidya Mandir scheme, and it was introduced in CP and Berar. Scholars say that it was of similar nature, similar character to the Varda educational scheme that we studied in the previous slide. This scheme was introduced in CP and Berar, and all of you would be surprised to know that all the members of this committee were non-Muslims. Not even a single Muslim was added in this committee to design the educational syllabus for the students of India. This is the reason that in this scheme, the non-Muslims who were in the committee tried to eliminate Islam from the educational syllabus of students of the youth of India. The medium of instructions was Hindi or Marathi of the books that were designed under this scheme, and Islam was completely eliminated from this scheme. Then Maulvi Abdul Haq tried to tell the situation of his schools to Gandhi by the help of a letter. He wrote a letter to Gandhi, and he wrote some things in the letter that I have written here, and let's see what Maulvi Abdul Haq said to Gandhi in the letter. Maulvi Abdul Haq wrote to Gandhi that you will be surprised to learn that when a representative of my Anjuman paid a visit to a school in village Pandher of district Chintwara, he was dumbfounded to see that most of the Muslims and the Hindu students were offering prayers in front of the statue of the goddess Saraswati with hands clapped before the school hours. The students studying in such schools have forgotten their traditional greetings, and instead of exchanging Assalamu alaikum, they greet with Namaste or Jai Ramji Ki. Students, can you analyze the situation here? Can you understand that how Congress government was very desperately trying to root out Islam from youth of Muslims, how it was trying to inculcate Hinduism in Muslims? Because it had policy of one nation, it was trying to infuse the ideology of one nation in India. This is how it was trying to eliminate Muslims from India. It was trying to infuse the Hinduism in the youth of India, because it had the aim of rooting out Muslims from India. This is how it was trying to achieve its aim. Then all the political and non-political parties of Muslims rejected this scheme. All India Muslim League also rejected this. Sayyid Sulman Nadwi said, "It is an attempt of the majority to dye the minority in its own colors." How beautifully Sayyid Sulman Nadwi is trying to explain the situation of India. He's saying that the majority, that is Hindu, is just trying to amalgamate the Muslim, that is a completely separate nation, in its own colors. Hindus, who is a majority, is trying to mix Muslims with itself. Maulana Ahmad Said, who was from Jamaat-e Ulama Hind, rejected it and threatened to launch a civil disobedience movement also. And it is interesting to note here that Maulana Ahmad Said was from Jamiat-e-Ulama-e-Hind, and Jamiat-e-Ulama-e-Hind always sided with Congress, and it always supported Congress. But this time, this organization also rejected such kind of policies and threatened to launch a civil disobedience movement. Another policy adopted by Congress to suppress Muslims was Kill Urdu Policy. We have started in the previous lectures that Hindi-Urdu controversy was first started in 1867 when in Banaras, Hindus kicked a severe storm of protest and forced British government to replace Urdu with Hindi. And in 1898, Hindus were successful in their efforts, and Hindus successfully made British government replace Urdu with Hindi. Now, unfortunately, the government is in the hands of Congress, and Congress did everything that it could to replace Muslims, to replace anything that could remind them of the rule of Muslims. Hindu leaders were in favor of replacing Urdu with Hindi. They believed that the national movement could gain strength through a common language only. There should be a one common language, and the language would be Hindi, because this language was of Hindus. It represented Hindus, and Hindu leaders wanted everything of Hindus everywhere in India. After coming into power, Congress leaders issued the orders of making learning of Hindi mandatory in schools. Devanagari script was also introduced in schools. All government announcements, statements, and advertisements began to be issued in Devanagari script. Although Congress leaders replaced all the easy, understandable words with the difficult words of Sanskrit language, but students, this practice was counterproductive because people of India were not very good at these difficult words of Sanskrit language, and they were not comfortable with these difficult words. They understood the easy words of Urdu, and they were not at home with the difficult words of Hindi. But Congress leaders were adamant at this, and they wanted to replace everything of Muslims with Hindus. They wanted everything of Hindus that represented Hindus in India. So this is how they were trying to suppress Muslims in India. So students, before starting the efforts of Muslims to protect Muslim minority in India under Congress Raj, I think first we should try to analyze the policies adopted by Congress ministries. First of all, Congress government declared Bande Mataram as the national anthem of India. Then it gave the Vardha educational scheme. Then it gave the Vidya educational scheme. Then it adopted Kill Urdu Policy. So what these policies depict? What was the mentality of leaders of Congress? Why Congress adopted all these policies, and what it shows? What was the main aim of Congress leaders behind adopting all these policies? Students, the main aim of Congress leaders was to amalgamate Muslims and Hindus. Its main aim was to erode away the separate identity of the new generation of Muslims. This is the reason that Congress declared Bande Mataram, which was a song that incite the feelings of anti-Muslims, that incite the anti-Muslim sentiments. This song was declared as the national anthem of India because this song presented a Hindu militant against the Muslim rulers as the hero of the novel. Moreover, Vardha educational scheme opened the eyes of Muslims in India. It deprived Muslim students of the knowledge of Islam and their own culture, their own history, and their own leaders, and it provided Muslim students with the education of Hinduism. In Vardha educational scheme, Muslim students were taught about the Hinduism, Hindu history, Hindu culture, and everything that presented Hinduism. Now students, can you notice that how cleverly the leaders of Congress are trying to convert Muslims into Hindus? How cleverly they are trying to erode out the separate identity of Muslims in India. This was their main aim. Then they tried to kill Urdu in India because they wanted Hindi, that was the language of Hindus, to be the national language of India. They wanted Muslims to speak Hindi, they wanted Sikh to speak Hindi, they wanted everybody to speak Hindi because they wanted the rule of Hindus in India, and these were their policies to prevent any communal tensions because they were trying to convert all the Muslims into Hindus by giving them education of Hinduism and by not giving them education of Islam and Muslims and their own history. These were all their policies to convert Muslims into Hindu. But Muslim leaders were definitely wise enough to understand the hidden aims of Congress leaders behind all these policies, and they started doing efforts to protect Muslim minority in India under Congress Raj. First of all, they rejected Vardha educational scheme. All India Muslim League and all other political as well as non-political parties rejected Vardha educational scheme. Sayyid Suleiman Nadwi criticized Vardha educational schemes and he said this educational scheme is an attempt of majority to dye minority in its own color. Then student Muslim leaders started efforts to protect Urdu language. Babai Urdu Maulvi Abdul Haq did a yeoman's service to protect Urdu. All India Muslim League and Anjuman-e-Tarakki Urdu forged a joint stand and issued statements in favor of Urdu. Then Liaquat Ali Khan said, "We left Arabic language for this India and for Hindus. We left Turkish language and adopted a language which came into existence and made progress in this country, a language which is not spoken anywhere else. Now it is demanded of us that we should speak the language of Balmik. We have taken many steps forward for the sake of Hindu-Muslim unity. We shall not now take another step forward. We are standing at the edge of our limit. Anyone who wishes to meet us should come over." This is what Liaquat Ali Khan said. And now students, you would be surprised to know that Urdu was not a language of Muslims only, it was the language of India because it was flourished in India. It was not just the language of Muslims, it was the language of all Indians, and you would be surprised to know that Hindus also made a great contribution in promulgation of and development of Urdu language in India. But Hindus associated Urdu with the Muslims and Islam because it was flourished in the rule of Mughals, who were definitely Muslims. So this was the reason that Hindus were trying to replace Urdu with Hindi. But Muslim leaders also did their efforts to protect Urdu language. Muslim leaders continued their efforts to protect Muslim minority in India under Congress Raj. A committee was set up by All India Muslim League in 1937. This committee was chaired by Raja Sayyid Muhammad Mehdi of Pirpur, and its task was to investigate the condition of Muslims under Congress Raj. This committee prepared a report named Pirpur Report, and this report covered social, cultural, political, and intra-communal tensions in India. This report presented the complaints of Muslims. It showed that how Muslims are being socially, culturally, politically persecuted and oppressed in India. This was a very comprehensive and very well report, and it presented the complaints of Muslims in India. Then there was another report which was called Sharif report, because another committee was appointed in Bihar under the chairmanship of S.M. Sharif. It presented the acts of suppression and oppression against Muslims in Bihar. So these two reports presented that how Muslims are being persecuted in India under Congress Raj. On October 22, 1939, the Congress Ministries resigned. Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah appealed to the Muslims to celebrate the end of Congress Ministries as a day of deliverance. He exhorted the provincial, district and primary Muslim League organizations to hold public meetings and offer thanksgiving prayers. Quaid-e-Azam sent the following resolutions to be carried in public meetings. It stated, "This public meeting of Muslimans records its opinion that the Congress Ministries have conclusively demonstrated and proved the falsehood of the Congress claim that it represents all interests justly and fairly by its decidedly anti-Muslim policy. The Congress Ministries have failed to safeguard the rights and interests of the Muslims and other minorities. The Congress Ministries, both in discharge of their duties of the administration and in the legislatures, have done their best to flout the Muslim opinion, to destroy Muslim culture, and have interfered with their religious and social life and trampled upon their economic and political rights. Therefore, it expresses its deep sense of relief at the termination of the Congress regime and rejoices in observing this day as a day of deliverance." Quaid-e-Azam gave this resolution, and Quaid-e-Azam was berated by all Hindu leaders in India. Hindu leaders accuses Quaid-e-Azam of inciting these communal tensions in India at the crucial time. They said that this is a very crucial time for India and you're trying to incite communal tensions among different communities of India. You're trying to incite anti-Hindu sentiments in Muslims. But students, just try to understand, give your own opinion. Wasn't this justified, this resolution given by Quaid-e-Azam? Quaid-e-Azam tried to show mirror to the leaders of Congress. Quaid-e-Azam spoke the truth. Quaid-e-Azam said that you people of Congress claim to be the protector of minorities in India. But what you did, you tried to suppress Muslims in every possible way. What you do and what you say, what you promise, your actions and your promises are in stark contrast with each other. This is what Quaid-e-Azam said, and Quaid-e-Azam said the truth. So Quaid-e-Azam was berated by the Hindu leaders, but he was appreciated and he was supported by all the minorities of India. All the minorities were at the back of Quaid-e-Azam at the end of the Congress Raj in India. And this thing increased the popularity of Quaid-e-Azam in India. So students, not only Muslims but all the minorities of India celebrated the resignation of Congress. The Parsis, untouchables and depressed classes celebrated this day of deliverance, proved the influence of Quaid-e-Azam in India. Day of Deliverance was celebrated at 22 of December 1939. Then it established that Quaid-e-Azam was the true leader of minorities. In fact, the Parsis were also at the back of Quaid-e-Azam. They supported Quaid-e-Azam, and the leaders of Parsis said that at this time Quaid-e-Azam is the true leader of minorities and we would fight with Quaid-e-Azam for our rights. So it is very important to understand that Quaid-e-Azam was not just fighting for Muslims, but he was fighting for the rights of minorities. And after the end of Congress Raj, all the minorities were with Quaid-e-Azam. Moreover, it belied that claim of Congress that Congress is the sole representative of India. So this was the end of Congress Raj in India. Now students, what were the impacts of Congress Raj? Well, Muslims got united. Muslims saw the true colors and true mentality of leaders of Congress. After the end of Congress Raj, Muslims adopted the two-nation theory for good. Muslims realized that yes, we are a separate nation. We cannot be ruled by Hindus, and Hindus are there to suppress us, and we cannot trust them once again in our life. They realized that they are a separate nation and they need a separate state. It traced the way for Pakistan movement. Congress' claim of sole representative of all nations of India was belied. Congress used to claim that Congress is the representative of all nations of India. It represents Hindus, it represents Muslims, it represents depressed classes, it represents Parsis, Sikhs, everyone. But when it came to power, it showed that it is only the representative of Hindus and it is not the representative of the minorities of India. So its claim was belied. Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah came out to be the sole representative of minorities in India, and after this, Quaid-e-Azam fought for the minorities of India. It increased the popularity of All India Muslim League. Students, there were many Muslims in India that supported Congress, that supported Indian National Congress because they were nationalistic. They didn't want to leave India. They just wanted to live in India forever, for their entire life. They did not have the courage to leave India. So this is the reason that they were supporting Congress and they did not support All India Muslim League, because All India Muslim League, after Congress Raj, demanded a separate state. Allama Muhammad Iqbal gave the Allahabad address. Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan also said that Muslims are a separate nation and Muslim cannot live with Hindus. So there was many Muslims in India that did not believe in such things and they were supporting Congress. But after this Congress Raj, after these 2 years in which Congress ruled Muslims, Muslims changed their view about Congress and All India Muslim League. They realized that they cannot be ruled by Hindus and they cannot live under the rule of Hindus. So they changed their view about Congress and All India Muslim League. So students, we have studied in detail the Congress Raj of 1937 to 1939. We have studied that how Muslims were marginalized and how Muslims were suppressed under the rule of Congress, nationalistic Hindus in India before partition in 1937 to 1939. Today, students, similar situation is being faced by the Muslims of India under the government of BJP. BJP is a government of nationalistic Hindus and BJP is suppressing Muslims in India. Muslims are marginalized in India. Muslim culture is being suppressed under BJP government. So we can draw a comparison between the Congress Raj of 1937 to 1939 and the government of BJP in India. Ashutosh Varshney, an expert on Indian into communal conflict at Brown University, said, "The longer Hindu nationalists are in power, the greater the change will be to Muslim status and the harder it will be to reverse changes." Now here, an Indian is accepting that yes, Hindu nationalists are in power and they are trying to change the status of Muslims in India. In other words, he's accepting that Muslims are being suppressed in India. There is political suppression of Muslims in India. The representation of Muslims in parliament has stagnated after the 2019 elections. BJP government took the government in 2014. It won elections of 2014 and it set its government and Once again, it won the elections in 2019, and scholars say that after 2019 election, the representation of Muslims in parliament has stagnated. Moreover, in 2022, a spokesperson of BJP, Nupur Sharma, committed blasphemy. Students, when a local person commit blasphemy, this is a different thing. But when a political figure delivers such kind of statements, this is entirely different. And the level of severity is very high in this matter. Nupur Sharma was a spokesperson of the BJP. She committed blasphemy and she incited the sentiments of Muslims. She hurted the sentiments of Muslims. So it shows that how indifferent these people are towards Muslims. Then there is legislative suppression of Muslims in India. Indian government has passed suppressing laws for Muslims. Indian government banned headscarves in Karnataka, and we all know that Muslim women cover their heads in public, and Indian government banned headscarves in Karnataka. And it made Indian Muslims start protest in India. Then there is restriction of religious freedom, and anti-conversion law was also passed by the Indian government. Then there is another thing that I would like to talk about is bulldozer justice of 2022. This is the title given by critics to an act committed by the Indian Parliament and Indian government. Students, in 2022, houses of area where Muslim majority was inhabited were demolished. Indian government defended this act by saying that the houses were encroachment. So this was just an act against encroachment, but scholars say that this was an act to suppress Muslims in India, and the Muslims whose houses were demolished were involved in protest against the suppressive laws passed by Indian Parliament. So this is the reason that Indian government demolished the houses of these people. So critics gave this act a name, that is bulldozer justice of 2022, because this event happened in 2022. Then another suppressive act passed by Indian government is Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019. Students, this act gives the right of citizenship in India to all the minorities who migrated to India on or before 2014. But Muslims are excluded in this. It gives the right of citizenship to Parsis, to Jain, to Sikh, to Hindus, and to all other people who migrated to India on or before 2014 from the neighboring countries of India, that is Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Bangladesh, and all the Muslim majority countries that are neighboring India. But Muslims are excluded here. This Citizenship Amendment Act does not give the right of citizenship to Muslims. Now, this is discrimination against Muslims. Office of High Commissioner Human Rights of United Nations called it fundamentally discriminatory. Then the BJP government repealed Article 370 that gives the autonomous status to Jammu and Kashmir. It is the BJP government that repealed this article and ceded Jammu and Kashmir to India. This is another kind of suppression of Muslims. Then there is economic suppression. People of India, the Hindutva groups and the nationalistic Hindus started this campaign against Muslims of India. They started economic boycott of Muslims in Karnataka in 2022 and in 2021 and 20 also. They run an online campaign and they compel other Hindus also to start this economic boycott of Muslims. They're trying to suppress Muslims in every possible way. So students, this was a brief comparison of Congress Raj and BJP government in India. And now we all can understand that what was the thing, what Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, Allama Iqbal and Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah feared, why they were emphasizing on a separate state from Muslims, because they knew that Muslim cannot live under the rule of nationalistic Hindus. Students, here I must clear it that the founder of India, Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, especially Mahatma Gandhi, they envisioned a secular state. They were not in favor of persecution or suppression of minorities. They just envisioned a secular state because they believed that for the prosperity of India, they needed a secular state where all people live in harmony. I must clear this thing here that they did not want suppression of Muslims, especially Gandhi did not want suppression of Muslims or any minority in India. But Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Allama Iqbal and Sir Syed Ahmad Khan knew that it is just the belief of Gandhi and not many people of India. They knew that there are nationalistic Hindus in India and they would never ever let Muslims live in India peacefully. They would suppress the Muslims whenever they get the opportunity to suppress Muslims. So this is the reason that Muslim leaders were adamant at their demands and they demanded a separate state for Muslims of India. So this was all about Congress Raj of 1937 to 1939. I tried to explain it, I tried to make it simple for you, and I hope that all the listeners now understand and have a very good idea of what this Congress Raj was and how Congress ruled Muslims of India. So this is the end of this lecture. I hope all of you understood very well this topic and all of you can memorize it now very easily because I tried to explain it very comprehensively. And this is the end of this lecture. Till next lecture, thank you, Allah Hafiz, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel Knowledge Realm.